Hi, welcome to another edition of This Issue. By the way, it's our 16th year of broadcasting this issue in the state of Maine. I'd like to thank you for watching and thank all the volunteers that are on our crew and the people at Harpswell Community TV for their production assistance for many, many years. My guest this time is Tanya Bukarina from Yalta in Crimea in Russia. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for inviting, Bruce. And happy anniversary.
Yeah, thank you.
It's long, 16 years old.
Yeah, 16.
for the radio program.
We met while I was in Russia last October. You were my guide when I visited Crimea for several days. And you've come to Maine to visit a mutual friend. And while here, you're going to do some speaking events in the area. Why don't we start by having you tell us a bit about yourself?
Well, you've seen the work which I've been doing for years in the Crimea. So my degree was in the foreign languages and literature. And I was in professional world of tourism as a tourist guide for many years. And back in 2016, we organized an NGO. So we promote Crimea through tourism and also people's diplomacy. That's why I'm here.
People's diplomacy, what does that mean?
Well, when you visit Crimea, you will see you can visit different organizations, talk to ordinary Crimeans and ordinary people from Sebastopol, Yalta, Simferopol, and to see real life, to see the history of Crimea yourself.
Now
you've been to one of Yalta schools, correct?
Yes.
You've talked to students.
You took me to a school where I spoke to students.
So.
How did I do?
Oh, perfect. Kids were happy.
In this country, the 2014 referendum decision by the citizens of Crimea to leave Ukraine and to rejoin Russia, that whole experience, that whole situation has been distorted by Washington. The United States says that Russia annexed Crimea, which basically means that Moscow stole or grabbed or invaded Crimea. But I learned before I went and while I was there that there was an election and the people of Crimea voted to leave Ukraine and to rejoin Russia. Can you talk about that?
So back in 2014, actually, this is the 5th anniversary of the Crimean Spring. And in February 2014, if you remember, the so-called Revolution of Dignity took place in Kiev.
So Kiev, the capital of Ukraine.
It was called the Revolution of Dignity. But you know, it depends on which side you are, because for others it was just the coup.
A coup d'etat organized by the United States.
Oh, well, you are an American person, you know better. I wouldn't come into politics too much, but the regime change took place. And, you know, it was not peaceful at all. And the constitution of Ukraine was simply broken. There was no government, complete disorder, you know. We've been sitting at homes, watching what was going on in the streets of Kiev. And we saw signs of riots. You know, nobody wanted civil war to come into our homes.
Into Crimea.
Into Crimea. And today you can read the correspondence, these official papers, the correspondence between the Crimean government and the Ukrainian government, because Crimea was an autonomous republic within Ukraine, and we had our own government, parliament, constitution. So the Crimean government pleaded and appealed to Ukrainian government to stop disorder, to use the constitutional measures. And when nothing happened and regime change took place, the people of Crimea and the government of Crimea decided to go its own way. You understand? So there was a revolution in Kiev and counter-revolution of Crimea, if you want, this way, if I can put it this way. So Crimea is a republic with 2 million people, but if you look further to the southeast, you can find a port, Sebastopol, which was founded roughly when your founding fathers signed your Declaration of Independence in
1776.
Yes, and Sebastopol was founded in 1783 by Catherine the Great as the Russian naval base on the Black Sea. So since that time, it has been like Russian Imperial Navy, Soviet Navy, and after the breakup of the USSR, it was a big deal what to do. So it was split between Russia and Ukraine. So Russian Navy was there for the last 230 years. And
So the claims that Russia invaded Crimea,
no,
it's
listen,
nonsense because the military was already there, right?
Listen, according to a bilateral agreement between Russia and Ukraine after the breakup of the USSR, there were several treaties, but Russia could locate its navy and troops up to 2042, and that was a contract because Russia paid Ukraine up to $200 million a year. And Russians could allocate 25,000 troops according to the contract, you see? So when they say that suddenly, Russians appeared and they grabbed Crimea, no, it was part of the contract on one hand. On the other hand, when the referendum took place on the 16th of March, 2014, and the Crimeans had a choice, you see, to answer either of the question, Crimea is part of Ukraine or Crimea is part of Russia. Anyone could make a choice.
Now,
Plus, I'm sorry.
Let me ask you this question. What percentage of the Crimean people voted to say we want to rejoin Russia? What percent?
More than, 87 voted, and out of those, 97, 96 voted.
So 87% of the eligible voters voted.
Visited.
And out of those that voted, 96, 97% said they wanted to leave Ukraine and join Russia.
Yes, exactly. And you can understand why. Just Sebastopol residents could not even imagine in their worst dreams that one day Sebastopol can become a NATO base, and there is a very long history connecting Crimea and Russia, and people didn't want again any civil war in Crimea, you see?
And this was part of the plan. There's incredible evidence that the United States organized the coup d'etat in 2014 in Kiev, in the capital of Ukraine. There's massive evidence that the U.S. was behind that. And the plan really was have the U.S. take over Ukraine, put in a puppet government, which they did, and then take control of the base in Crimea for a NATO base, giving the United States a military base right on the Russian border. That was the plan, correct?
It could be a plan, and if you look, you're an American person, you know that your country has like 800 bases all over the world. So if you look in the Black Sea Basin, you see Turkey, part of NATO, Romania, Bulgaria, part of NATO, and today NATO ships are not far from Nikolaev, it's the Black Sea port. So, it was impossible that one day Crimea might become also part of NATO. So that's why people stood up and they made their choice. And besides, nobody says that during the referendum, Crimea was independent because Crimean government signed the Declaration of Independence from Ukraine on March 11th.
2014.
2014, yes. So on so that's 11th of March, March 16th, people had to select either of two questions. Yes, we voted. Next day, the Crimean government again, plus Sevastopol, appealed to Russia and asked to rejoin Russia again. And on the 18th of March, there was a new treaty signed between the Crimean government, Sevastopol government, and the Russian Federation. So it was all done according to constitution, and it was all peaceful process, you see? And people voted with all the consequences. And the question is why, for example, when it happened in Serbia and Kosovo, and there was no referendum, it was just the decision of the parliament, and immediately the United States recognized what happened, correct? Well,
that split.
But when people voted in Crimea, and it was done through the constitution, you see, and later, on the 1st of April 2014, so the United States government put heavy sanctions against Crimean residents for their choice. And isn't it a collective punishment, which is against all UN rules?
Law.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this question.
Why there are such double standards? You know, it's my question and question of many Crimeans.
Well, it's a good question. There shouldn't be. Is it true that at the time of the collapse of the former Soviet Union in 1991, that the citizens of Crimea also voted then to leave Ukraine and to rejoin Russia? So the people in Crimea for a long time, all the way back to the fall of the Soviet Union, have wanted to rejoin Russia. Why was that?
Well, first of all, you know, if you look back, what had happened in 1991, the breakup of the USSR, what happened in 1954 when Crimea, originally part of Russia, it was transferred to Ukraine because it was the USSR, you know, 15 republics, so no one asked questions why Nikita Khrushchev did it.
It was all part of Russia.
It was all part of the Soviet Union, you see.
Yeah.
And there was a very strong pro-Russian movement in Crimea when already it was part of Ukraine, starting from 1990s. Well, and of course the key issue is Sevastopol, the Russian Navy. This is the core. You know, you should understand what happened just through Sevastopol presence, through the presence of the Russian Black Sea Navy in Crimea, because this is a strategic place, and no president, I mean, no head of Russia, whether it's Imperial Russia, Soviet Russia, or present-day Russia, would like to lose Sevastopol as its only warm water port and navy. Just impossible. And every president, every head of the country is protecting his national interests. So that's what Russian leaders are doing. President Putin is doing now.
According to some in the United States, Russia wants to recreate the former Soviet Union and take over the world. Today, the United States spends about $1 trillion on the military when you add up all the various pieces of the military system. You add it all up, because some of it is in the Department of Energy budget, some of it is in the Pentagon budget, some of it is in the NSA budget, National Security Agency, the spy agency. But when you add it all together, it's $1 trillion a year. Russia spends about $60 billion a year. In fact, Russia in the last 2 years has cut their military budget, saying they wanted to concentrate more on poverty and funding human needs programs. So please share your feelings about this question. Is Putin trying to take over the world and recreate the Soviet Union?
Well, first of all, Russia is not a communist country anymore. There is no more USSR. Do you agree with it?
It's a capitalist country now, correct?
It's capitalist. It's half capitalist country, I would say. But, you know, we've been living in Crimea, in Russia, only for the last 5 years. And we see enormous changes in terms of infrastructure improvement. For example, you visited Crimea a few months ago. And did you see that today Crimea remains a huge construction site?
Yeah.
Because,
Road
roads,
expansion. And
yes, roads under construction. The brand new bridge was built recently, which connects Crimea and the Russian mainland, correct?
Mhm.
So everywhere we can see the construction of new kindergartens, hospitals, schools around their construction. And you can see that for Russia, it's also important to see how ordinary people live, you see? So I'm not in the military field. I cannot tell you exactly how much Russia spends on the new military equipment. But as a civilian, I can tell you that life is improving. And, Russian army is getting stronger. Of course, you cannot compare Russian army in 1990s and Russian army today, even judging as a civilian.
But what about this question? Do you think the Russian people, the Russian civilians like you, is your perception that your country is trying to take over the world? Or
no. Why? Why? Tell me, what for? Russia is the largest country in the world land-wise, and there are a lot of domestic problems, you see? And for example, in Crimea, we are building the new republic, the new society, so we are concentrating mostly on our internal issues. And I think, our leaders learned a lesson back from Soviet days. Like one Chinese man told, you cannot eat more than you can digest. Do you understand? So one country cannot absorb half of the planet and live perfectly well, having no domestic issues and problems.
that would be a good lesson for the United States to consider. You can't eat more than you can absorb, because it's kind of like a mirror. This is the way I think. The United States government looks in the mirror and sees its own aggressive nature. Like you said, U.S. has 800 bases around the world. We have 7 wars going on today, the United States does. And so we like to blame others for what we see in the mirror. So it would be a good lesson. Let's move to your favorite subject, the culture and history of Crimea. You're a professional tourist guide. You're a citizen diplomat with an NGO that you've created. Tell us about Crimea, what the people of Maine should know about your beautiful country. I mean, your beautiful
Crimean
Republic, part of Russia. Yeah, tell us about Crimea.
Well, first of all, the best chance to know Crimea is to visit it, because this is the land with great history, and you can find traces of 5 empires there: Romans, Greeks, Ottomans, Byzantines, and Russian Empire. You can find the ancient Greek policies and wonderful mountains, the Black Sea, which attracted various peoples throughout the history. If you come to Yalta, of course, you'll visit Levadia Palace, where FDR stayed for a week and where a very important conference took place.
FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt.
Yes, exactly.
In fact, the hotel that you put me in when I came to Yalta, you put me in a hotel.
In Levadia.
And it was on Roosevelt
Street, yes.
And there was a statue, a bust of Roosevelt just across the street.
And it was unveiled quite recently.
Yeah.
Like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So if you're interested in literature, it's also like land of treasures, because Anton Chekhov lived in Yalta.
You took me to Chekhov's home in Yalta.
Anton Chekhov, Voloshin, Maximilian Voloshin. And I look at this picture, and if you're interested in marine painting, you should go to Ivazovsky Gallery in Feodosia. If you're interested in a naval history, here is Sebastopol. And if you're a wine connoisseur, there are so many vineyards and there are so many wineries, which quite good wine. So I'd like to invite you, your friends, and just explore yourself.
Well, we're coming back. I'm bringing a group, a study tour, we're calling it, to go to Moscow and Crimea and St. Petersburg next spring. And we're coming to Crimea, and you're going to be our guide while we're there.
Well, you'll have a number of other guides as well.
Yeah.
We have a big team of people. Yeah.
But we're looking forward to it. And,
Thank you, Bruce.
And you know, the thing I enjoyed my time there. It was only maybe 5 days when I was there last October, but you know, like I've learned in so many other places, the people are wonderful there. You know, they love to laugh, they love to eat, they love their families, they love to tell jokes. I mean, people in Crimea are just like the people anywhere else, right?
Yes, like people in Maine or somewhere else.
And we should all be friends, right? Rather than having people that have certain power interests wanting to create wars and chaos and everything else. So we shouldn't go along with that. So
we shouldn't. And I'll tell you, more I travel in the United States, more I understand that we are very much alike, Russians and Americans.
Really?
Yes.
In what ways? In what ways?
Well, in many ways, because first of all, we live in two great countries, and that's true. We have, for example, as Russians, we consider we are the greatest in terms of literature, you know, ballet, hockey.
Hockey. Now, you might get an argument from some Mainers about hockey now.
Oh, yesterday we visited a hockey play, you know?
Oh, in Portland?
Yes, in Portland. And the day before we watched an American movie, Red Army, about Vyacheslav Fetisov and his team back in the 1990s here.
Yeah.
And you know, there was a wonderful phrase which I remember, which said, you cannot hide for a long time three things, which is the sun, the moon, and the truth.
Oh.
Isn't it wonderful?
That's great. That's great.
So let's find out the truth.
So tell me a little bit more about the ways you think Americans and Russians are similar.
Well, as I mentioned, we are proud of our countries, first of all, yeah? And you, for example, I think that Russian people probably know a bit more about other countries, just because if you look, Russia is surrounded by so many countries, yes? While your country is just surrounded by two oceans, yeah? And you are more concentrated in domestic problems, and you do not interact that much with like Europeans or other nationalities as Russians do. Well, school education is a bit different, but I mean, you know, basic human principles like family values are the same.
Russian people are a little bit conservative, aren't they, when it comes to, you know, religion and certain values? I mean, they tend to be a little more conservative, aren't they?
Well, in comparison with Americans, yes. Yes, we are. I would say that we are more, not conservative, but traditional.
Traditional.
Traditional, yes,
Yeah.
yes. And that's good,
family
because,
and
you know, we have very, very deep, like, roots, and we know who we are. We have, like, if you go to Sebastopol, for example, you will find the place where back in the 9th century, Kievan Prince Vladimir was baptized. So Christianity was introduced there back in the 10th century, 10th century. So you see, people know their history, they know their roots.
How old is Russia as a distinct country?
Well, we should go back to Kievan Rus then. You see, or Muscovy. It depends from which, you know, from which century you consider Russia is Russia. Whether it's from the Tsars, from the Romanovs. And do you remember when the Romanovs came into power? 1613, yes? And recently we celebrated 400th anniversary of the Romanovs. So it depends from which from which century, because Russia extended its borders throughout the centuries.
Yeah. Now
Russian
Russia was frequently invaded by like Genghis Khan, correct? The Mongols, they invaded Russia at one time. Napoleon invaded Russia, Hitler invaded Russia. In fact, when Hitler invaded Russia, or the Soviet Union at that time, it was called the Soviet Union, 27 million citizens in World War II, 27 million citizens of the Soviet Union were killed, died during the Hitler, the German invasion, correct?
Correct. So this was a huge price to pay for peace. And the most important day for all Russians, it doesn't matter where they live, in which republic, is May 9th, which is called the Victory Day. And this is the day when everyone, literally everyone, goes on peace march, holding the portraits of their fathers and grandfathers who took part in World War II. So we call it Immortal Regiment.
Now, the Americans like to claim that they defeated Hitler. The Americans lost 500,000 people, soldiers, during World War II. 500,000. That's a lot. I'm not negating that in any way. But the United States never talks about the contributions that the former Soviet Union made, the Russian people made in defeating Hitler. 27 million. That's a big difference. 500,000 Americans, 27 million Soviet citizens died defeating Nazis.
Well, it's considered to be the victory of their lives, yes, to be correct, not just American victory, okay? Let's put it
but I'm saying that the Russians often
look
get
at
left
the
out.
price. Look at the price which the Soviet Union had to pay, 27 to 28 million people.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be that, I wouldn't put it to, without question mark, that Americans won the war. I'm sorry. As a Russian person, I don't accept it.
Yeah. It was
Is it in your history books?
Yes, supposedly. Yeah, I haven't seen any history books lately.
It's not right.
We're down to 1 minute. Would you like to say anything in closing to the people of Maine?
Well, I'd like to say that, first of all, I'm very happy to be here in the United States. And part of my heart will always stay here. People are wonderful, generous, with great sense of humor. And you are known for your hospitality. And I would like everyone to, learn more truth and look a bit further than the mainstream media to know what was going on in the world, in some other countries beyond the ocean.
Beautiful.
And let us build a bridge of peace.
Beautiful.
That's
Thank
it.
you. Thank you, Tanya, very much.
Not at all, not at all.
Pleasure to have you here.
I'm waiting for you in Russia.
All right, we'll be there soon.
Great.
And thank you for watching another edition of This Issue. Until next time, good luck to you all, and please get organized.